ordered the destruction of all other existing copies of the Quran except Hafsa's, whose copy was given back to her. And this is because there were many other copies in private collections that differed from the one Abu Bakr had in his possession. All right? So unfortunately, toward the 4th century of the Hijrah, no trace was left of any of these works. Only those of Abu Bakr, Ubayyah, Ali, and Ibn Masud are known to us, and then only through certain details reported by authors from the 1st century of Islam. Consequently, all supposed copies of the Quran from this time forward will be based on the critical revisions of Abu Bakr, which were to be distributed to the 4 corners of the empire. This would not make a lot of sense if not for the fact that the Arabic writing at the time of Uthman was not seriously deficient, but was seriously deficient, especially from the vocal standpoint. Because here's the deal. The lingua franca of the time was Aramaic, not Arabic. Arabic wasn't fully developed at that time. It was very, very crude. It had actually very few words that made some sense. Let me give you a quick example. I'm going to put this up here. You see this right here? Same thing, right? This is Abid. That word could mean a lot of different things without diacritical marks, which came up later on. If I do this, it says Eid. Eid is like a festival, Eid al-Futur, so forth, all right? Eid al-Messiah, right? What they call Christmas and so forth. It could be that. Now, if I take it and do this, now it says Eind, like I have. Like I could say, Eindi Kalam, I have a pen. All right? Or, if I do this, I have Abid, slave. You feel me on this? It's one of the fundamental problems. And there are many, 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 many other examples of that I could demonstrate. Because there are no diacritical marks. And since there were no diacritical marks, there were many, many, many different kind of readings. And so the early text, in the various versions of the earliest text, you can see have different meanings. And not only that, what you experience here is that you see where there are many, many, many other types of text of this Quran that have been produced and that scholars are aware of. It says, however, this notion of a critical revision could not have happened considering the poor state of Arabic language at the time. When we were on the radio show, I think somebody asked me that question on Brother Mike's radio show, and I pointed out to them that fundamentally you had Nabatean, Open Sesame, in the Tale of 1,001 Nights, that really talks about the little kingdom that was in a place called Petra that's in Jordan. And the Nabateans who lived there had a unique kind of language that existed, which was kind of like Arabic, but not quite. But Aramaic was the bridge language. That wasn't even Hebrew. Everybody spoke Aramaic, like I tell people all the time, right? In the days of the book that is called the New Testament, the people who lived in the land of Palestine spoke Aramaic, but the book is written in Greek. And the only people who could speak Greek or were conversing in Greek were people who were the intellectuals. But the book is written in Greek. And none of them people in Palestine could read, especially in Galilee, none of them read Greek. None of them. All right, so these are fundamental issues and why the study of language is very, very important. All right, so it says the story was invented starting in the reign of the Umayyad Caliph Abd al-Malik. And the authenticity of the Quran does not reside in its identity with an original, but only in the fact that it is a discourse inspired by an authentic messenger. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the Zanj revolt. You can read a lot about this and how these Africans got together and revolted and whooped a whole bunch of butt, all right, to get their freedom in Baghdad. All right, and this goes on to talk a little bit more about that and in Mukhtar, where they had basically leveled a bunch of buildings, and they revolted. They were wanting their freedom back. Right? The Bakit Treaty, very important. The word Bakit means fortune in Arabic. And this was an agreement that was made between certain groups of Arabs and the Africans, particularly those in the Sudan and in Nubia, to have them deliver X number of slaves a year. And there were certain of these various rulers who decided that they weren't getting enough on this, or they were being left out on getting some Bakit, so they got involved in the agreement too. And I think, if you understand the Bakit, you might understand maybe some of what's going on in there today. Now, Musa Halil al-Janjaweed, the devil rides on horseback. I always say, that's Musa Halil al-Janjaweed. I always say he looked like Jeremiah Wright, Reverend Jeremiah Wright. He got to look like Reverend Jeremiah Wright. But these are the Janjaweed, and these are the people who are supposedly being supported by the so-called Arab government in the north to attack places like Darfur and other places like that. All right, so this is some of the pictures of the destruction and stuff that has been going on in the Four Kingdom, and some of the things that are happening there, which has not been very, very pretty. And I don't really hear a whole lot of people in the Islamic community talking a lot about it. All right. This is Sister Josephine Bakita. She is a saint, the only Nubian saint, the only Sudanese saint in the Catholic Church. And here's a very interesting story. She was born in 1869 in the village of Al Gosa in the Darfur of the Dago clan, because there are many, many, many different types of clans that make up the Four people. All right. In 1878, at the age of 9, she was kidnapped by Arab slavers. They named her Bakita. Remember, they took her name. I don't know what her real name was. They gave her a name, Bakita, from the word Bakit. She was sold many times until a Turkish general sold her to an Italian family from Genoa. You know what Genoa is, right? That was one of the major financial ports in Europe. All right? The Turkish general, remember I told you about the Turks, right? The Ottoman Empire sold her to the Italians. She went on to go to the convent as a servant of her owner's daughter, that is the Italian family. The Italian girl goes to the convent to be a nun. And she takes her servant with her to look after her in the convent. What's up with that? For those of you who think that, slavery had ended with the Catholic Church and Christianity. All right? She refused to return to Africa and was freed by the Catholic Church and became a nun in 1896. And that's because the woman, Dr. John Henry Clark used to say this: we out-poped the Pope and we out-Muhammad. And she was so deeply engrossed, and that's partly because of our nature, our spirituality. Our spirituality is deep. And so when we commit, we go in all the way. And that's what she did. And because of her saintliness, they canonized her. The Catholic Church canonized her. All right? Slavery in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We're just about wrapping up here. It was formally abolished only in 1962. I know stories of cases of people who would believe that they were going on a Hajj with a friend of theirs from the kingdom because they cool. Only to discover when they get there, this person owes somebody some money and you are the payment. You are the payment. All right? So, it's a little bit about that. I just want to move on here. All right. Of course, there are lots and lots of blacks in Saudi Arabia. In my Arabic class, I was like out of that class, out of advanced everything. I met a young lady in the intro class, beginning class, who, very, very attractive sister. And I was like, man, that's a fine sister. And so I asked her, she saw me because I got up in front of the class because I was like my Arabic teacher's star pupil. And I like to think that I was, because the class was really designed for people like me who really didn't have good Arabic skills. But yet the class was full of people from all over the Arab world. From every country you can think of: Tunisia, Palestine, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, Morocco, all over. Yemen, they were all over, which was really cool for me because I learned a lot about these different dialects, about their cultures and their behaviors and their patterns. And they didn't know, because they knew I was a professor at the university, but they didn't know that I was there like on the covert tip. And I was. because I wanted to know. And, you know, and I was very fortunate to have a teacher, a young Palestinian teacher who was very, very, very knowledgeable, very knowledgeable. You know, she was the first person to tell me that there are more black people who speak Arabic than there are Arabs who speak Arabic in the world. You know? And she's right. Right, so she informed me and gave me a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of this presentation that I'm giving you all tonight is based on my experience and the things that I learned that she introduced me to, that I took and ran with. Because again, my purpose was covert. All right, and sometimes you got to go and live in the lion's den to find out what the lion likes. And I ain't scared of the lion. You know, I found that, for example, there are women, when they get married, most of the time they marry their first cousins. But they don't like to say that here because we know marrying first cousins is taboo in this country. But most of them marry their first cousin. This is partly has to do with the fact that they don't want wealth to be distributed anyplace else, so they keep it within their family. All right. Of course, they divorce and stuff like that, and they do other types of things. But if you notice, for all of those who live in your community, when have you ever seen their women come and work in the store with them? Never. And you won't. All right? You won't. So there are lots and lots of black Saudis. In fact, in Riyadh, which is where the main palace of the royal family is, there's a community devoted exclusively to blacks. And this is where this young lady came from. Because I asked her, you know, where was she from? And she told me she was from Saudi, you know. And I asked her, where in Saudi, you know, Medina, you know, in which city are you from? And she said, I'm in Riyadh. I'm from Riyadh. I say, so you live in that black community that's in Riyadh, where all the blacks live? She said, yeah, I don't care if you're a PhD or a pauper, that's where you live. And that's in Riyadh, the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. All right, so, all right. Then, of course, we have Omar al-Bashir, you know what I mean, the president of the Sudan, who, of course, considers himself to be an Arab, too. All right, then you have, of course, some African Sudanese women there, lots of beautiful women there in the Sudan, that's for sure. Black Iraqis who have been arguing and fighting for their own rights there and complain about being called the abbots and how they're looked upon very lowly. They do all the hard labor. Up until the mid-800s, they were, you know, basically considered slaves. At the bottom, you see it said the Arabs are still look at us as being incapable of making decisions or even governing our lives. People here are 95% illiterate. They have terrible living conditions and very few jobs. Then you have the Yemenis. I had a guy in my class from Yemen. He could have been walking down any street in the city of Chicago or right here on the west side of Detroit, and you wouldn't have known the difference until he opened his mouth. Right, lots and lots of them like that. And even when I was living in the kingdom, in the villa where I stayed with a bunch of Brits, the people who took care of us were Yemenites. All right, but they took real good care of me all the time. I was the only brother there, and they took real good care of me. And that's because I respected them. You know, I gave them their propers, and we used to sit and talk sometime, you know. And they would talk about things, about how they were being treated and stuff like that, you know, because I used to tell them a lot of times, you know, you don't have to make my bed for me, I make my own bed. They was like, no, Yusuf, we do this. We take care of you. All right. They made this special type of kind of chili-like stuff that they made during the week, and I liked it so much that every week, I think on Wednesday, we always had that to eat. The Brits would be complaining, why do we always have to have this to eat, mate? Because it's what I like. And the Yemenites are gonna hook me up. They hook a brother up. They used to fix do my laundry and stuff like that, right? Have all my stuff neatly folded and everything on my bed when I came in, you know? They had their stuff, they just put their stuff over in a corner somewhere. It might be neat on the bed, right? But I respected them. I gave them their propers, right? Which is very important. Okay, so here the Yemenis, who they call Akdam, and they point out here that, which is a word in their language that means slavery. And it points out how they are thought to be Ethiopian descendants and have been in Yemen for centuries, but have not achieved integration or equality. And racial discrimination is so dramatic that and ingrained in Yemen, it is hardly noticed. They work as street sweepers because no one will hire them for anything else. And the children are also excluded from public schools, and they are subcaste of society. You know, of course, as you can see here, wherever the black man is in the world, he is being oppressed. Right? And then you had the black Omanis here, which says, some say, haven't you noticed how the El Kawal, that is the black Omanis, are dumb and only care about their traditional singing and dancing? You know, it's kind of what they say about us, too. All right? So it says slavery was only abolished in Oman in 1970. Now, if it's just abolished in Oman in 1970, that don't mean that it's done. That just means we don't hear about it. All right? And ex-slaves were illiterate, and their main profession was man labor. All right? Then we had the Moroccans, the black Moroccans, or what they call the Maghreb. That's what they really call it in Arabic. The Maghreb, that is the furthest place west from the word Ghurb, which means west. And, a lot of interesting stuff about them. I don't want to go too much into that. The Mauritanians, the blacks in Mauritania have been suffering deeply and greatly, very greatly. But we don't hear about this. We don't get this on the news because they, if we start finding out about this, of course, at the big Durban conference and stuff like that, they had on racism and stuff, and where they declared that certain nations had participated in racism, and that the Africans were demanding reparations from the European world as a whole. Well, they got to be, that was really, really big news, except the next day, 9/11 happened, and so nobody heard about it. All right, but it was very, very important. Then you had the black Kuwaitis, all right, who they call Kali, right? The word Kali is a word for uncle. There are many words in the Arabic language that represent familial relationships versus, uncles on the mother's side, uncles on the father's side, and so forth and so on. All right, and again, too, as you see at the bottom, they consider them to be Abid. All right, so Egypt is still so intimidated by its glorious African past that its Arab government would not allow thorough research into Egypt's past. President Gamal Abdel Nasser falsified Egyptian history when he declared Egypt an Arab republic, that is, United Arab Republic. And Gamal Abdel Nasser, when they asked him, what is an Arab? He said, anybody who speaks our language, like our customs, and believe in our way is one of us. That is the definition of an Arab. Because I know you're probably looking, well, you really ain't told us what an Arab is. It's because nobody knows. It's a matter of how you, like me. I speak Arabic. I could do all that kind of stuff. And they would say, oh, yeah, he's an Arab.
So does that mean you got to turn in your black card?
You got to turn in my black card, brother. All right, so it says in Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Sudan, Somalia, Eritrea, Mauritania, and the rest of the Arab world, Africans are treated as the scum of the earth. They are second-class citizens at the very best in their own countries, and blacks in these countries cannot aspire to positions of respect or authority. There are hardly Africans in high government positions in Arab-governed African countries. It's a few years ago, Mauritania sacked all black natives from their civil service positions. Black Mauritanians protested their plight to the African Union without receiving attention because African Union black leaders fear offending their Arab colleagues in the AU, namely Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, who wants to be in charge of the African Union because ultimately what they want to do with the African Union is make the African Union a subset of the Arab Union. All right, so in Mauritania, they have had to declare an end to slavery 6 times in this century alone, and still nothing has changed for the captive majority African natives, and African slavery is still in the statute books. In Algeria, Arabs throw stones at black people, including diplomats in markets and other public places. Hundreds of blacks who have lived all their lives in Saudi Arabia are being repatriated daily right now after losing an arm or a leg or for some minor or trumped-up offense and without regard to their comfort, welfare, or rights. Racism toward black Muslims in Saudi Arabia is so strong, it makes one wonder if making pilgrimage to Mecca should be one of the 5 pillars of the Muslim faith and why blacks bother to be Muslims. Hotel. Questions? Yes. The fun part for me. Huh? Whoa.
Okay.
Question.
My name is Leo. My question, and this is a kind of tough question. I know you just indicated that you don't, that no one knows what an Arab is, but I'm trying to figure out uh, basically the origin of the quote unquote Arab that emerged in the beginning, you know, just
Yeah.
before
Pre-Islamic.
slavery. Yeah, pre-Islamic.
Yeah. Well,
What and I know this is difficult in terms of however you can describe it in terms of whether it's genetic, cultural, geographic, in whatever way you can describe who these people are, and is there a distinction between them and black people that live in the same geographical region, and what would you account for the cultural difference that they seem to have when it comes to the type of economy that they have created, which is slavery?
All right. That's a very good question. Well, first off, we got to remember that, you know, the notion of the place being called Arabia, or Arabia Feliz, as the Romans called it, was kind of paralleled off of the idea of Italia. You know, the kind of the Roman idea. But in the early days of pre-Islam, you had many other civilizations. You had the Himyarites, you had the Sabaeans, who had their own languages, their own culture, and everything. Very, very different. And yes, we could argue safely. We could argue safely that the earliest inhabitants of this place that is thought of as Arabia were blacks. And there are still many, many blacks there. Like an example of the young lady I told you about that I met. She's a Mutayr. The Otaiba and the Mutayr are two of the major black clans in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And in fact, many of them, and you know, I didn't even get a chance to discuss this at all, but many of them were very responsible for helping Abdulaziz ibn al-Saud, for whom the Saudi family is named after and the kingdom is named after, win the kingdom. All right? There were other clans, for example, that they fought against under Abdulaziz. Those people right now ain't got a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of because they lost. But all of those who did help him fight, they're doing pretty good. They're all doing pretty good. So prior to that, yeah, you have these early kingdoms that, you know, who knows what had happened to the Marib Dam. Maybe it was some type of climatic thing climate thing that may have happened, environmental thing that made the dam dry up and stuff like that and forced the civilization to dissolve. They've always had close relationships with Ethiopia or Abyssinia, Habash. Always close relationships with them. The city of Mecca is now and always has been a trading spot. That's what Musaylima and Abu Bakr and them fought over, who was controlled the commerce in Mecca and Medina. They were always places of commerce and trade. And one of the things that they did commerce and trade in Mecca and Medina were slaves, mainly from, you know, East Africa or wherever they could get them from. You know, it really didn't matter to them. It was business. And one of the ways that what we think of as the Hajj, how it developed, was that this was a place where people used to gather to do business. And this kind of business meeting eventually was incorporated into this big event that happens in the kingdom every year. And it's huge. It's huge. Now, I must say this. I have never been to any place on earth that I found to be more religious than the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. No place. They real serious about their Islam, and they don't play. And of course, they practice a form of Islam called Wahhabism. You know, Ibn Wahhab was a very, very dangerous guy, you know, and he was very, very close to Muhammad. They fought back and forth with one another. They finally made agreements with one another so that they could ultimately work together. But the Wahhabis and those people who follow Ibn Wahhab, they're what they call the religious police in the kingdom. And if they catch you out of line, they will whip you on the street. I mean, they will beat you, man or woman. It don't matter. They will beat you, right? Am I kidding? Go ahead. No, hold on. Because, all right. They'll beat you up on the street, think nothing of it. Okay, so did they kind of?
No, because I'm trying to get to, just like you have a word, you go to the etymology of the word. I'm trying to get to the etymology of these people. Who it's hard to figure out. I mean, you talked about the trading folks. Were they possibly foreigners from the north?
That's a good question. I'm sorry I didn't get in there. Yes, there is a segment of them who are people from, not necessarily from the north, but from the east.
Okay, so you say east, you're talking what?
I'm talking about the east, like Iraq, Iran, places like that. See, not everybody doesn't fall down from the north on us.
Okay, well, that's what I'm trying to
Right,
figure out.
right.
But where can I find more information just to kind of get a handle? Because I want to, in order to study the culture, because I want to understand what.
Well, here's the danger of studying the culture. All of them are different in terms of culture. Because see, when I speak about the Arabs, I'm talking about Arabia. But there are what are known as the Arabic-speaking peoples, like the Palestinians. You ain't gonna never hear any of them refer to themselves as Arabs. They Palestinians, they Jordanians, they're Syrians, they're Moroccans, they're whatever they are from wherever they are. They don't think of themselves as Arabs. That's what we think.
Okay, and of course I'm coming from that type of paradigm.
Right.
That's what I'm trying
Right.
to get out of,
Right.
or at least understand. But I think speaking generally, there's a certain cultural unity that you see.
No, there's only one unity among them. You know what that is?
No, I'm saying about Africans.
Yeah.
In general.
Okay.
Just like even in the East.
Mhm.
And even in the East. Okay. Well, anyway.
All right. But I will say this briefly, and that's this, that the only unity they have is the language. Otherwise, all of them are very, very different. All right. Yeah. Almost like the Latinos, and what they call Latinos or Hispanics. Even though I have a problem with that, because as far as I know, the only place where they spoke Latin was in Italy, was in Rome, and the only place where I know about Hispanic is from Hispania, which is Spain, and none of them come from there. As my Spanish teacher told me, and told a white boy in my class in Spain once, y'all speak Mexican, we only speak Spanish here in Spain. Yes, go ahead.
Couple questions. One, I did some research and I looked at Strong's Concordance, and
Yes.
according to Strong's,
Yes.
the word Arab means mongrel. That's
But that's not quite correct.
but I'm saying that's.
You know, some have argued that it means like the Hebrew word Arab, which means dusky or dawny or you know, something like that, swarthy. Even I've seen that term, but it's kind of difficult to really describe what it is, considering that when we think of Arabs, we have to think of people who live in Arabia, and even then we have to break it down into other stuff.
That was my question.
Oh, okay, okay.
You know, I got you. Yeah. Okay. First off, what do they think about Obama? And secondly, you know, you said that there are more Africans that speak Arabic.
Than Arabs who speak Arabic, yes.
And so you know, you still got this small group of people that control the masses.
Absolutely.
And so pretty soon, you know, white folks are going to be in a minority. And so they still, well, yeah, I mean, they're going to be less of their, I apologize. They're going to be smaller numbers here, but they're still potentially going to control the masses of people. How do you see, you know, I don't know if you're the right person to ask this, but what do you see that we can identify commonly to get black folks to see themselves as one, if it's possible?
Well, that's a very broad question. And first, let me address the question about most of the Arabs I know, when President Obama was running for office, all said that they were voting for Obama, to a person. And even now, I think that they still hold him in, you know, most people around the world hold that man in very high esteem. It's only here in the United States that they're giving us all these dumb polls and stuff like that. Like, I mean, wondering who they polling. Because they sure ain't polling none of us. You know, we know what the man is up. We knew what the man was up against the moment he walked into the house that black people built. We knew, we understood it. All right. And he's faced with it, you know, and those people I like to say who are uninformed, who say, well, the man ain't doing this and the man ain't doing that. You know what I mean? Well, excuse me, but he is a black man sitting in the most powerful seat in the world. And there are a whole bunch of people out there who are doing everything in their power to make sure that stuff goes wrong. All right, and that's why, you know, we got to give a man a chance, because believe me, if we let them, if we get him out of the seat, y'all gonna be paying a whole lot of attention to what we be talking about up here in this podium. You all are gonna come here and you're gonna listen, and you're gonna be asking, what can we do? Well, what I'm saying to you is let's learn to be proactive and not reactive. You know, we need to be proactive and not reactive. I don't know, necessarily what the answer is, even though I think the first answer, I think, to what it takes for us to be unified is for us to first realize who we are. We don't know who we are. See, we still confused. You know, we got a lot of us here still think we Americans. We ain't never read what the American